Good morning, children. Today I have brought a very beautiful uh, story from your textbook, The First Flight. It is story number 7, Glimpses of India. Under it, we are going to read three different and beautiful stories. They are Baker from Goa, written by Lucio Rodriguez. Number second is School, written by Lokesh Abrol, and the third one is Tea from Assam, written by Arup Kumar Dalla. So let's read. Let's start with the first story, A Baker from Goa. So children, this is a pen portrait of a traditional Goan village baker who still has an important place in his society. So you know what a pen portrait is? It is a portrait made by a writer with his words. Okay, so it is a pen portrait of a traditional uh, Goan village baker. So it is a pen portrait of a baker from a traditional village of Goa. Okay, who still has an important place in his society. In a Goan village, a baker still holds an important place. This is what this line tells us here. So the narrator tells us the author himself is the narrator here. He says, our elders are often heard reminiscing nostalgically about those good old Portuguese days, the Portuguese and their famous loaves of bread. So he tells us that their elders are often heard reminiscing or remembering nostalgically, that is fondly. Uh, his elders are often heard remembering fondly uh, about those good old Portuguese days, the Portuguese and their famous loaves of bread. So, good old Portuguese days refers to the time when Portuguese used to rule over Goa. Okay, so those eaters of loaves might have vanished. Okay, those eaters of loaves, those eaters of bread um, might have vanished, might have died, but the makers are still there. But the makers, the people who make bread are still there. We still have amongst us the mixers, the molders, and those who bake the loaves. The author tells us that they still have amongst them the mixers, the molders, and the people who used to bake the bread, the loaves. Those age-old time-tested furnaces still exist. The fire in the furnaces has not yet been extinguished. Okay, the thud and the jingle of the traditional baker's bamboo heralding his arrival in the morning can still be heard in some places. Maybe the father is not alive, but the son still carries on the family profession. These bakers, even today, known as Padir in Goa. So, uh, the narrator tells us that they still have mm, that they still have um, the bakers amongst them. They still have the mixers, the molders, and those who uh, bake the loaves. And those age-old, time-tested furnaces still exist in Goan villages. The fire in the furnaces has not yet been extinguished. The fire is still burning in those furnaces. The third and jingle of the traditional baker's bamboo, uh, which announced his arrival in the morning, can still be heard in some places. Okay, maybe the father is not alive. The author here tells us that maybe the father is not alive and he may not be carrying his family profession, but his son is there. But his son still carries on the family profession. These bakers are even today known as Pater in Goa. These bakers even today are known as Pater in Goa. During our childhood in Goa, the baker used to be our friend, companion, and guide. The narrator tells us that during their childhood in Goa, the baker used to be their friend, companion, and guide. He used to come at least twice a day. The baker used to visit them at least twice a day. Once when he set out in the morning on his selling round, and then again when he returned after emptying his huge basket. So the narrator tells us, the author tells us that the baker used to come two times a day. Once in the morning when he started selling his product, when he started selling his bread in the morning, and then uh, again uh, when he would go back home after selling his bread. The jingling thud of his bamboo woke us up from sleep, and we ran to meet and greet him. The author tells us that the jingling thud of his bamboo, which he carried with him, woke them up from sleep, and they used to run to meet and greet him, welcome him. Why was it so? The author tells us why they did so. Was it for the love of the loaf? Did they run and did they get up in the morning and run to meet and greet him just for the greed of getting a loaf of bread from them? Was it for the love of the loaf? Not at all. He clearly denies it. The loaves were brought by some paskin or pestin. The narrator tells us that the loaves of bread were bought by some peskin and pestin. Okay, the loaves of bread were bought by some other people, peskin or pestin, the maid servant of the house. We what we longed for were those bread bangles, but the children what the children longed for, what the children wanted were those bread bangles, which we chose carefully. The children used to choose carefully the bread bangles. Sometimes it was sweet bread of special make. Bread, sometimes those bread bangles used to be, be sweet bread of special make. Sometimes they were made especially for the children. The baker made his musical entry on the scene with the jang jang sound of his specially made bamboo staff. So, how did the baker make his entry on the scene? The answer is the baker made his musical entry on the scene with the jang jang sound of his specially made bamboo staff. Staff means chadi. One hand supported the basket and on his head, and the other banged the bamboo on the ground. The baker's one hand used to support the basket on his head, and the other hand banged the bamboo on the ground. He would greet the lady of the house with good morning and then place his basket on the vertical bamboo. Okay. We kids would be pushed aside with a mild rebuke, and the loaves would be delivered to the servant. The narrator tells us that when the baker used to come to their house in the morning with the jang jang sound of his bamboo staff, he would come, okay, and he would place his basket on the bamboo staff, on the vertical bamboo, and the children, the kids, were removed from there. They were pushed aside with a mild rebuke, with a mild scolding, and the loaves of bread were given to the servants. But we would not give up. So the children were removed from the scene with a mild rebuke, but they were obstinate and they did not give up. They did not move away. We would not give up. We would climb a bench or the parapet and peep into the basket somehow. So the children were pushed aside, but they were so obstinate that they did not go away. They remained there and they would climb a bench or the parapet and peep into the basket. Somehow, they would somehow peep into the basket by standing on a bench or the parapet. I can still recall the typical fragrance of those loaves. The author can still remember or recall the typical fragrance of those loaves. Loaves for the elders and the bangles for the children. The loaves were for the elders and the bangle breads were for the children. Then we did not even care to brush our teeth or wash our mouths properly. The children did not care to brush their teeth or wash their mouths properly. They started eating without brushing their teeth or washing their mouths. Okay? And why should we? They did not feel the need of doing that. Who would take the trouble of plucking the mango leaf for the toothbrush? They did not want to take the trouble of plucking the mango leaf for making it the toothbrush and washing their teeth. And why was it necessary at all? It was not necessary at all. The tiger never brushed his teeth. Their argument was that the tiger never brushed his teeth, and they said they used to argue that hot tea would wash and clean up everything so nicely after all. Okay. The marriage gifts are sometimes meaningless without the sweet bread known as the ball. The narrator here tells us that the marriage gifts are meaningless without the sweet bread known as the ball, just as a party or a feast loses its charm without bread. The author tells us that the bowl is an ingredient part of marriage gifts, and then it is the bowl is very important, and the marriage gifts are meaningless without the sweet bread known as the bowl, and similarly a party or a feast loses its charm without bread. So bread is an ingredient part of a feast or a party. Not can be said to show how important a baker can be of one village. So a baker held a very important place in a village of Goa, And we can understand this from the fact that uh, no marriage ceremony and no marriage gifts uh, can be complete without the sweet bread, which was called bowl, and parties and feasts also could not be organized. Okay, bread used to be the charm in the parties and feasts. So parties and feasts also could not be organized there without bread. Not enough can be said. So enough cannot be said to show how important a baker can be for a village. The lady of the house must prepare sandwiches on the occasion of her daughter's engagement. So it was a very important thing. It was a must. The lady of the house must prepare sandwiches on the occasion of her daughter's engagement. Cakes and bolingas are a must for Christmas as well as other festivals. Thus, the presence of the baker's furnace Thus, the presence of the baker's furnace in the village is absolutely essential. The baker or bread seller of those days had a peculiar dress known as the kabai. It was a single piece long frock reaching down to the knees. So, what was kabai? Kabai uh, was the dress worn by bakers. It was a single piece long frock reaching down to the knees. In our childhood, we saw bakers wearing a shirt and trousers. The author tells us that in their time, they saw bakers wearing a shirt and trousers which were shorter than full length ones and longer than half pants. So they were neither full pants nor half pants. Even today, anyone who wears a half pant which reaches just below the knees invites the comment that he is dressed like a padir. Okay, the baker usually collected his bills at the end of the month. So when did the baker collect his bills? The answer is at the end of the month. Monthly accounts used to be recorded on some wall in a pencil. So, another question is, where did the baker record his account? The answer is the baker used to record his account on some wall in pencil. Okay. Now baking was indeed a profitable profession in the old days. Baking was indeed a profitable profession in the old days. And the baker and his family never starved. They always lived a happy life. He and his family and his servants always looked happy and prosperous. The baker, his family, and his servants always looked happy and prosperous. Their plump physique was an open testimony to this. And the question is, what was the testimony on what was the proof of the baker's happy life? Their plump physique. Their plump physique. Oh, their feet. Uh, their fat body was an open proof to their happy and prosperous life. Even today, any person with a jackfruit-like physical appearance is essentially compared to a baker. Okay, even today, if any person or anybody has a jackfruit-like body, okay, if he she has a jackfruit-like physical appearance, he is compared to a baker. People say that she looks like a baker. Okay, so children, this was a baker from Goa. You must go through it carefully and then answer the questions. The questions are very easy. Thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe my channel for receiving other chapters also. Thank you very much.